2 minutes ago, the internet lit up with a headline no one wanted to read. Not because it was loud, but because it was quiet. Rick Harrison, the man audiences knew for his humor, confidence, and calm authority, is facing a kind of heartbreak no cameras can capture. Behind the jokes, the deals, and the decades of television fame, something deeply personal has shaken his world. And this time, there's no negotiation, no history lesson, no deal to be made, just loss, the kind that changes a man forever. For years, Rick Harrison was known as the steady center of Pawn Stars, calm under pressure, confident in knowledge, always in control. Viewers saw him negotiate deals, explain history, and keep the family business running with practiced ease. But behind the counter, away from the cameras and catchphrases, Rick Harrison was something far more important than a television personality. He was a father. Rick built his life on responsibility, providing, protecting, creating stability through hard work. Like many parents, he believed that being present in structure, showing up, paying the bills, building something lasting, was a form of love. And for a long time, that belief carried him forward. But no amount of preparation can guard against the unimaginable. When heartbreaking news involving Rick's family emerged, the image audiences knew instantly fractured. The man who spent decades understanding value was suddenly confronting a loss that defied explanation. Something no negotiation, no wisdom, and no success could undo. This wasn't a storyline. It wasn't television drama. It was every parent's worst fear, unfolding in real life. Rick's response was quiet. There were no grand statements, no attempts to control the narrative. He asked for privacy, not as a celebrity, but as a father trying to survive something no one is ever ready for. In that moment, the confidence audiences admired gave way to something far more human: vulnerability. Those closest to him described a man stunned by grief, struggling not with publicity, but with absence. The kind of absence that changes how you breathe, how you wake up, how you exist in the world. Fame offered no insulation. Experience offered no answers. Behind the pawn counter stood a man who had spent his life protecting history, now forced to live with a loss that could never be preserved, explained, or repaired. And that realization marked the beginning of a very different chapter, one defined not by business or legacy, but by grief that demanded everything he had left. Fame creates an illusion of protection. People assume success builds armor, that money softens pain, that recognition brings support, that experience prepares you for loss. But grief ignores status. And for Rick Harrison, the spotlight offered no shelter when everything changed. In the days that followed the heartbreaking news, Rick stepped away from the noise. Not because he didn't care, but because grief demands silence. The routines that once grounded him suddenly felt fragile. The familiar rhythm of work, once a refuge, now carried echoes of absence. And the public, accustomed to seeing him steady and composed, began to understand something uncomfortable. Strength doesn't prevent devastation. Those close to Rick noticed the shift immediately. He spoke less, moved slower, listened more than he talked. The humor that once came easily now surfaced only in fragments. Grief had rewritten his priorities, forcing him to confront a truth no amount of preparation could soften: that being a father doesn't end when your child is grown, and the pain of loss doesn't diminish with age or experience. What made the moment especially heavy was its visibility. Rick wasn't grieving in private anonymity. He was grieving as someone millions felt they knew. Yet he refused to turn pain into performance. There were no dramatic appearances, No emotional interviews. Just a man choosing dignity over exposure. In Rare Reflections, Rick acknowledged something painfully honest, that no amount of success teaches you how to survive this kind of loss. That the tools which built his career, logic, control, negotiation, had no place here. Grief doesn't bargain. It arrives, and it stays. And as the cameras dimmed and the headlines moved on, Rick Harrison remained, not healed, not restored, but enduring. Learning how to exist in a world permanently altered. Understanding that fame may amplify joy, but it does nothing to shield the heart when it breaks. When the cameras stop rolling, there is no script to follow. No audience to reassure you. No familiar rhythm to distract from the silence. For Rick Harrison, this was where grief became most real. Away from the pawn counter and the public eye, he was no longer the confident businessman or the steady television figure. He was simply a father, learning how to live with loss. Grief didn't announce itself loudly. It settled into the everyday moments, the empty spaces, the habits that no longer made sense. Rick discovered that the hardest hours weren't spent under scrutiny, but in private, when routine no longer provided comfort and memories arrived without warning. Those closest to him say Rick began measuring time differently. Success no longer defined his days, neither did schedules or deadlines. What mattered now was endurance, getting through one morning, one conversation, one quiet evening at a time. The man who once thrived on certainty had to accept that some questions never come with answers. Yet even in grief, Rick chose restraint. He didn't retreat in bitterness or turn pain into spectacle. He honored his loss by protecting it, by keeping it sacred. And in doing so, he showed a strength few ever see, the courage to sit with pain rather than escape it. There is something profoundly humbling about watching a public figure step back into humanity. Rick Harrison's grief stripped away the persona audiences knew and revealed something far more relatable. A man facing the same heartbreak countless families endure, only without the comfort of invisibility. When the cameras stopped rolling, Rick didn't disappear. He endured, quietly, honestly, carrying forward not because the world expected it, but because love, even in loss, demands it. Rick Harrison's story reminds us that fame offers no immunity from loss. Some heartbreaks are universal, even when they happen to people we think we know. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more human stories behind the headlines we scroll past too quickly.